Hey guys, we are live. Thank you for joining us for a great Live at 5 segment today. So we're doing a very cool segment for all you plant nerds out there. It's called Unique Plants with Michael Polazola. He is the assistant horticulture agent, and he's also the state pecan specialist. So thanks again, Michael, for being here.
No problem. And I'm in a very unique area. I'm just about 15 minutes outside of Forest Hill, the kind of one of the nursery centers of the state. So I have access to a lot of interesting and odd plant material. In fact, I think almost all of this material was sourced from there. So if you're interested in it, you can send us a message and we can help connect you with someone who may have it.
Okay, fair enough. You got a lot of stuff there, so I'm going to give you full screen access here so you can kind of.
Okay, and I'm going to rearrange it because I have a lot of my stuff in ceramic or terracotta pots because I use it for educational programs. Unfortunately, it means it's kind of heavy to lug around, but they just last better than a plastic pot for long term, as I'm sure you've experienced. You keep something in a plastic pot for a while, the sun breaks it down. Especially, I don't even have one here to show what, like a 3-gallon pot with a rim. You'll be carrying it somewhere, and all of a sudden, the whole pot falls down.
Yes, I've had that happen to me.
Yes, which is never fun. So long term, now I still use a lot of those plastic pots as intermediate steps. But anyway, we're not talking about containers. We're talking about interesting plants. And the first one we're going to talk about is this. It's one of my favorites. It's an Ornamental Oxalis. So
That's beautiful.
What?
That's beautiful.
Okay, let's see. I see someone says, "Are we muted?" But I think I can hear you, so it must not
I
be
can hear you as well. Let me check though. You go ahead and showcase your first one, but I'm going to go and check just to make sure.
Okay.
Guys, muted. Let us know.
Yes. Okay. This is native to South America, and it does really well outside here. If you recognize this kind of flower, let me take one for you and bring it close to the camera. Oh, the light's hitting it the wrong way, but we have a weed form of oxalis, which this is very closely related to, that you often will find growing in your lawn. So actually, most of the calls I get about oxalis are how to kill it. But this is probably one of my favorite things. Now, how to propagate this, and this is one you can see it is almost overgrown its pot here, and I'm just about needing to divide it soon. And it also does make some corms, but I've dug in here and I couldn't find any to pull out to show you. But the literature just say it makes corms. Now these leaves, it's also called false shamrock. Let me pull one of these off for you.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah.
And it kind of makes an umbrella effect. And in the heat at night, they'll, let's say, kind of curl down like this, or when they're hot and stressed, they'll do that too. So it's okay if it's doing it in the afternoon. Mine doesn't do it as much because my porch light that I have on is enough light to keep it going. But it is not unusual for them to fold down. I would check and make sure it's not dry. That may be one reason, but it's fairly easy to correct. And now my personal story with this one, it's interesting how just one plant can affect several generations. Oxalis was the first plant that my great grandfather gave my grandfather, and it was the weed form. He was probably only about 3 or 4 years old, and he dug it up and gave it to him in a pot, and that really cultivated a love of plants throughout our family for several generations. So even something simple, even the weed form of this, I like, and I don't kill it because of that story in our family.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that goes really good with purple and gold landscaping too.
It really does. It looks really good against this kind of yellow flower there.
That's pretty cool. Go Tigers.
Yeah. So let's see. The next one I'm going to talk about is Ornamental Strawberry. Now this is one I've just started, and this one in particular, I bought it as red, a summer breeze deep rose, and then I was searching the literature, and there was another one called Buried Treasure Red.
I love that.
And what I discovered is that they're both the same thing. One is what it's labeled as with one company, and the Buried Treasure Red is what it's labeled at through the Proven Winners program. So I just wanted to say that so that I nearly made a mistake and bought it twice, and it can be expensive to have it. This is one I didn't get from Forest Hill. I had to have it shipped to me. So the only thing I will say, I got this at the several times as other strawberries, and this one is staying more compact. Now, from an ornamental perspective, that's really great. You'd want it to stay more compact and small so that it stays in a pot like this real well. So your traditional garden strawberries put out runners and grow big and can overgrow containers sometimes. And this one I don't think is going to struggle with it. And I'll go ahead and it does make fruit. I've had issues getting good pollination, and I still won't get fruit because I'm taking this one off to show you. Let's see, this is a well pollinated fruit. It's more than likely going to make smaller fruit than ones you buy in the store because what you're really paying growing it for in this selection is mainly this red flower. Now, I will say red flowers are unusual in strawberries. Oh, I'm having to learn which way to move this for the camera.
I know.
But anyway, so most strawberries have a white flower with not as many petals as that. So this is one of my favorites just because it's unusual. You can get some fruit and it grows well in a pot. Let's see. It can develop runners over time. I've only had this one about 4 or 5 months, so it really hasn't. And when I got the plant, it was cut off to the ground. That's how you're going to get some strawberry plants sometimes. So it's made a pretty good growth as it is right now. You will need good pollinators to ensure you get the good fruit formation. Now this is really small; it's just starting. But if it wasn't well pollinated, it wouldn't be this nice kind of cone shape that you see. It would be misshapen, even small. And if it's misshapen at that stage, it's probably best just to go ahead and pull it off the plant because it really won't fill out better. There are white and pink selections of this with the bigger flowers available, or they're not available commercially yet. They're in the pipeline in the Proven Winners program, and I think this is certainly something to be on the lookout for as a neat.
I like that a lot. I love the red flowers. What? I love the red flowers. They're beautiful.
Yeah, so when you told me it looked like a poppy one time, I'm like, oh yeah, it really is very pretty in that regard. Okay, the next one's a big one, so it's going to take me a second to move it over. It's fern leaf lavender.
Okay.
It has these very tall floral spikes. Let me pull off one of the leaves for you to see. So what I like about this is having that fern leaf, it really allows good airflow through it. So some of the disease issues we can have with lavenders, where there's been times I don't recommend lavender for people, but there's this one and then another selection that unfortunately the name escapes me right now, that I would feel confident growing. Now, for most people in the state, we're going to want to grow it in containers.
Okay.
They need really good drainage and they like to be dry. In fact, I have one of these that I planted at my neighbor's house, and we have kind of a mixture of a soil here, but their spot there was slightly clay, and that's enough where it's not doing near as well as this one in a pot. It's just kind of stunted, turning yellow. So for most people, you're not going to want to grow this in the ground. This is going to be a nice, good potted selection. Now, this type of lavender, it's a certain special type. There can be Egyptian is what it's called, but the species, let's see if I have that written down. No, I conveniently don't. But one nice part, the interesting thing you can use to identify it is it makes the floral spikes in tridents. So
neat. Okay.
3 prongs, as opposed to a solitary one that a lot of other lavenders might do.
Okay.
Now, there's different strategies for using this. There's some people who say it's better to harvest the lavender that you're going to use for drying down for aromas before it even starts to flower, because these flowers don't dry down incredibly well from what I've been told. So essentially you want to have this that you dry down and it will release odors slowly over time. This one is probably not as strong smelling as some of the other lavenders, but I think it is a little bit better adapted, especially since one of the famous members of this one species is called Egyptian lavender, so it gets pretty hot in Egypt too. So these tend to tolerate the heat fairly well. Let's see. It does make kind of a nice mounding format. You're not going to see as much of that in the pot, but you might see it kind of just growing outward in the mound. I've noticed this here occasionally, it puts out more leaves higher up at the base of the trident.
Hmm.
So this is a trident that just grew out a different way. And it's just a really neat, I think using the foliage in this is a nice thing to use for flower arrangements, uses in portions of things. Um, it does, they grow about 24 inches tall with this, but really the floral spikes make it go even higher. It can get about 3 feet tall. In fact, I would say mine from the base here is probably almost exactly 3 feet tall. If not, maybe just a tad bit shorter. Let's see. Now it is a perennial in many circumstances.
Okay.
The way we're going to struggle to keep it a perennial here is mainly wet. Our winters are more wet. So, like in Egypt, they kind of have a wet and dry season a lot of times. But here, we're going to want to keep it a bit dry in the winter if possible. And you're going to have the best results with that doing it in a container. Right.
Okay.
Several times.
Can you talk about maybe you talked about it last time when you were on, some mosquito repellent plants possibly? Do you have any around?
I do. Let me jump. I had them further back, but I can jump back and forth with these. It's a good thing. In fact, we were talking about, let's see, the one in easiest reach is this. It's the kind of citronella geranium. And of course, it's insect repellent because it came with this. It just tells the insect to be there. Now, of course, prior to this, I was excited to use this one because it was actually showing some flowers to it. And of course, once we start, all the flowers go away. Essentially, this does not make a very great flower. You can even see from the remnants of it here, it was just a little purple and not very big at all. And so this is not why you're getting this plant. You're getting it for the leaves. Now, we had this discussion. Having this plant just planted by your house is not going to have a major deterrent to mosquitoes or insects at all. It may a little bit because they are releasing some volatile compounds that might be spread through wind. But I'll be honest, I've come outside and seen mosquitoes fly out from it. It's just the way you get this to work, and it works fairly well, is you would take a leaf off.
Okay.
And you would kind of crush it.
Hang on, we can't see. You got there you go.
Yep. All right. You kind of crush it, and you would rub it on where it's kind of like rubbing insect repellent on. And once you've crushed it, there's still more volatile compounds being released. I would kind of just take the leaves wherever you are and just kind of leave them down. Like if you're having supper outside, you might take 1 or 2 leaves, rub it on your arms, and then leave the crushed leaves underneath your table so that it's still releasing the compound. Now, even though I said that it doesn't really have a great deterrent just intact, it is a mild deterrent. For Memorial Day, I was having a meal with some friends, and I brought this under where we were eating, and it deterred some insects even without us crushing some of the leaves because I wanted it to look pretty for our things. I didn't take many leaves off. So now it has the same type of citronella compound in it, like a citronella plant would. It's just not near the concentrations.
Okay.
And because of that, I would caution against eating it or letting anything else eat it. Citronella can be mildly toxic to cats or dogs and people if you eat too much of it. So just don't eat it and let other things eat it.
Don't eat it. Got it.
Yeah, that's a good general rule for most plants, but sometimes we have to be reminded. And it's just if I had a small child that I knew liked to graze outside, like to pick stuff, I might not keep an insect. Not that I think it would cause any. There's other more dangerous plants you should be concerned about, like which I got a call about today, but it shouldn't be too bad. Now I think the next one I'm going to jump to is what I was calling kind of our butterfly combo.
Okay.
which is the first part of that combo is the purple Homestead Verbena. And we really like it here in Louisiana. One, it is purple. And it's a Louisiana super plant. And it's a Louisiana super plant because we've grown it a lot and we found that it does really well. Now, this is just one little small container plant, but you plant this and it will eventually become a large mat wherever you have it. And I really like it that this is one of the pollinators I use to attract things to my strawberries. That things will come to it and it just encourages pollinators to come visit my yard.
Okay.
So, and this is often, it's a trailing verbena. That's why it makes them matte. And you are going to have to be careful. That's something I discovered this year. There are a lot of different types of verbenas out there. And the trailing ones are kind of native to our area originally. And they're the ones that are best coming back year to year. There's others that are more of an annual in our area or have more disease issues. I have one further back that's a nice hot pink color that I have just for that. But I'm not really expecting it to come back next year, so I didn't invest too much in it. Now, it does flower best in the late winter and then again in kind of late spring. And really at this point, you could go through and deadhead. Now, you can see even just this one, that's a good, if it had a big mat, there'd be a lot of deadheading. What people often do is just prune them back because they are vigorous growers and they will make, you can just kind of prune that mat back and that accomplishes the deadheading and encourages it to keep growing and making new flowers for you. And then to go with that, the reason I call it a butterfly combo, this attracts your mature butterflies there. They're going to come get the nectar out of this, but there's nothing here for caterpillars. This will not help a butterfly complete its life cycle. So you're going to want to have something for the butterflies to eat, like a milkweed. This is a red milkweed. And actually, as I was doing research for this, there's a lot of different types of milkweeds out there. There's kind of the tropical milkweeds, which we grow kind of as an annual,
Right.
which will work real well here. But there is some research that suggests that it's not the best milkweed for your butterflies. That
we have a lot of people asking us questions on that lately, and talking about like swamp milkweed and which one should they plant and things like that.
Yes, it's best to get ones native to North America if you can, because that would be best for the butterflies and caterpillars we have here complete their life cycle. Now they will eat this and go through with it, but a native selection, which is a different species, let's see, it's often called butterfly weed as opposed to milkweed, and it's a tuberosa one, is just better adapted. Now, I will tell you, it's going to be more difficult to find. What you're going to normally find in a lot of nurseries is going to be this one, and it is more widely available. You're going to have to do a little bit more searching for the others. The others should be a little bit hardy and slightly more perennial, but that depends on what you're growing. If the butterflies are eating it down, which you kind of want it to do, you might have to replace it more often because it's not having huge carbohydrate reserves.
And when it comes, do you know much about like when aphids get on it? Should, people have asked, what should we do about it? Should we just let them be because of the butterflies? And
exactly. Anything you're going to do to treat the aphids might have an effect on the butterflies as well. So I would encourage you, they're going to have aphids and they're going to be often the bright colored ones that you don't see much on anything else, like a bright yellow or a bright orange. And that's just the whole point of the plant is to be sacrificial anyway, to encourage insect life. So I would just go ahead. Let's see, actually.
Is there aphids on there?
Yeah.
Oh, where are they at? Oh, yeah. Oh, all over the place.
Yes. So it blends in. I didn't even notice it until you told me. This is going to have aphids. They enjoy it. You could use this as a trap plant if you needed, but you can look and see this is not the type of aphid that actually gets on a lot of other things. So like the black aphids that I have that get on my camellias are different aphid than this. I would just let this be the let the butterflies and aphids kind of go through and eat it down and just use it to support the local insect life. It's great for beneficial insects. Let's see if I said everything I wanted to say for that one. I think that accomplishes everything I wanted for that one.
Oh,
Now,
I want to point out we had someone on our Instagram, a younger guy. He asked us, his name's Hayden. He asked us about identifying this plant, and he said it's a unique plant in his garden. And so it is this plant right here, that straight up growing one right there. So we sent it to our ID specialist.
yeah,
And Michael, he came back with that it's an arum. Arum?
yeah, I think that's what we settled on, an arum lily.
Yeah.
It's different than the plumeria both me and you were inclined to say at the beginning, which is we have an ID specialist to help us out for times like that.
So Hayden, it's an arum. Arums are in the Araceae family. They usually produce the spade and the spadix. So check that out and see if it turns out to be that, and send us another photo. But I just wanted to put that in there because he had specifically asked, so we wanted to get to that.
Yeah, I'm thank you for bringing that up because I get excited and go a little bit too long sometimes. Now the next one is one I got outside of Forest Hill as well. Is a heliotrope, and this particular one is called Fragrant Delight. It has a very nice aroma to it, which I have a poor sense of smell, and even I can smell it. Of course, I have to put it right there. And to me, it smells kind of like a mixture of vanilla and baby powder, which may not be what everybody else likes, but it is a nice, pleasing aroma. It will attract bees and butterflies. Other people describe it as being very vanilla scented. Now these dark, let's see, the blooms start kind of a dark violet, and then I don't know if you can see it kind of fading in this. It fades to more of a different lavender color over time.
Okay.
The blooms on this aren't particularly that old to have been faded. I do really like the texture on the leaves. It's very textured, kind of coarse, and that gives it a nice use for arrangements as well. You can kind of cut back up to here and use it for that. Doo-doo-doo.
Dr. Owing says heliotropes need to be used more, and that they're perennials, and that he likes them.
Yes, you do want to, you probably, before they change their colors, you might want to deadhead them so that you encourage it to grow, invest more in the new flowers. That's a very common thing among a bunch of different types of ornamentals. You can look at it, do your research into it to see whether it's something you need to deadhead or not. But a lot of times you're essentially not completely tricking it, but you're just telling the plant, okay, I'm going to go ahead and flower again because my old flowers are gone. Now, there's a lot of stuff we could look at from a plant physiology standpoint and plant hormones that are real cool, but that's kind of outside the scope of this. And now I will say they are a lovely plant. Don't eat it. It is poisonous.
Don't eat it.
That's another one. So if you have a small child that likes to put things in their mouth, and if you have one, you would know, maybe don't grow this one for a few years. So it can be toxic in some things, but the same thing that it's considered toxic, it was actually used medicinally by the Incas and for helping reduce fevers. So there are potentials, even in our ornamentals. We like to have a nice, good diversity and have a lot of different things growing because you never know. One day we may go back and find a medicine out of something ornamental like a heliotrope.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Lou said, hello, Michael.
Oh, Miss Lou, yes. So the next one, straw flower. This is this yellow one I have here, which I will pick up and bring to the screen temporarily.
That is a super cool plant.
Yes, it is. I had never heard of it before this year. And you can tell it's kind of native. Can you hear the crinkle?
Not really.
I wish you really could. I'll bring one closer. It's a very unusual flower in that it almost starts half dried. Now, the blooms start like this, and they all actually, in the morning when I come up, this just looks like a bunch of yellow spheres. I should have taken a picture and submitted it. And really, they just open and close based off of the light level. And because the petals themselves, let's see, I need to put it down so I can move, are kind of already dried down.
Yeah.
You're already halfway there to having a dried flower, and it's actually the center of it that goes bad before anything else.
Okay.
Oh, and I see someone's correcting me on it. There's more of bracts as opposed to flowers. Okay, I can see.
Fair enough, but that's a really good one to use, I guess, for floral arrangements too.
Now, we'll say, look at it when you're getting it. Not all of them are perennial. A lot of them are annual. So you're going to want to, this is a Cottage Yellow, which is supposed to be a nice perennial one. And like I said, they close at night and make that neat little sphere. They're native to an arid climate, so they're going to prefer to be a little bit dry. And most of these plants, most ornamentals, it's much better to keep them on the dry side. So, and yet, I see the person asking, does strawberry straw flower come in other colors? Yes, it does. I really regret that I did not get the red one.
That would have been super pretty.
Yeah, a mixture of the two together. They come in a lot of different colors. The annual forms also come in pinks and other types of colors, which may be worth growing it just to have a bunch of dried flowers for different arrangements, maybe for a wedding or something like that. I think it would be a neat little thing to have. Now, pruning these aren't necessary, but I can tell you that I just ended up, I was invited to someone's house and I made an arrangement with this and the lavender, which came out really nice. And when I pruned it back, all of a sudden it put a lot more out. So this one does benefit from being deadheaded.
Okay. Let's see. Can heliotropes go in the ground?
They can. They can go in the ground. I'm growing it in pots so that I can take it to Master Gardener programs and that type of thing. And I rent a house, so I want to take it with me. But they can grow in the ground. I would watch and see. Like I said, most things prefer to be on the dry side, so you don't want to plant it necessarily in a low area. You're going to want to have it where it has good drainage. And I find a lot of plants, a lot of calls I get about unusual plants and even normal plants where they didn't come back and yet they're perennial. It's because they stayed too wet in the dormant season and they rotted. So, yeah, especially, let's say, we're going on a tangent here. It is an interesting plant, but I wasn't planning on it. Caladiums.
I love them.
So I have all these different ones mixed together, and boy, this plant is too hot. Too heavy, so it's going down. But that is probably the number one reason caladiums don't come back, is that they get too wet over the winter and they rot. So that's why they often benefit from being dug up. It's mainly so, but since they stay drier over the winter. So I'm keeping these in a pot, and I'll probably try moving the pot somewhere protected to keep it dry over the winter so that it can come back better. And now I didn't realize how unusual this one was until I started doing the research for it. To start with, it's the Variegated Hibiscus. And it's not necessarily the light shining off it weird. That's how white the foliage is.
Man, that's white. Okay.
Yeah, this one is called Aussie Queen. And I did not realize it was that hard to get. We have a person in Forest Hill who has some stock plants that propagates from it every year. And what I really like about this one is actually, even though it can do kind of bushy growth, with this one, it's more of a kind of low growing. You can even propagate this and have it in hanging baskets. You see how it's kind of falling over like that? And I've seen people do that with this one. It is going to be a bit slower grower. And do you know why? I'm sure you do, but I'm asking you on the spot.
Oh, you're asking me on the spot?
Yeah.
It's the white leaves on the plant, I imagine.
That horticulture degree is very useful sometimes.
I try.
That's exactly right. Everything you see here that's not green is not providing a lot of photosynthesis for the plant. You are getting some areas. So, but that leads me up to, and this goes for ornamental selections as a whole, anything that has an excessive amount of white in it, you may want to go to the one next to it that's not as white. Okay. It may not be as vigorous. Now, unless you want to baby it in a pot like I'm doing, and this is a multi-year project where I'll keep it in a greenhouse this winter until it gets nice and big, how I like. If you want to have good growth, and especially a hibiscus, But even other types of variegated ground covers, the more white you have in it, the less vigorous and quick it's going to fill in. So that is a negative side effect. Personally, I love variegation enough that I'm willing to go through with it. Now, I will say this is pretty much the main attraction of this plant.
Yeah.
It makes a red flower. There are a ton of prettier hibiscus flowers out there. You're not going this one for the flower. You're going this one for the leaves itself. And we mentioned why it's a slow grower, because it will need winter protection. Because it's a slow grower, you probably can do that fairly well. I'm going to attempt bringing it to Forest Hill and seeing if I can have someone start in the greenhouse for me over the winter, but we'll see.
That's awesome.
All right. Oh, I'm getting dirt all over me. That's why I didn't wear nice clothes for this.
No, it's horticulture.
Yes. Now, the next one is another insect repellent. Well, let me get a sip of drink real quick.
Oh yeah, definitely. While you're doing that, I'll go ahead. I want to show off my plant.
Okay.
Let me get myself on a screen here.
This is great because we were just talking about variegated foliage.
Yeah, so this is a super cool plant. This is Tricolor Asian Jasmine. Let's see if I can get it in the full screen. There we go. And so if you see, I have the white, the green, and the pink going on, and like the pink comes out on the new growth of it. So let's see if I can get a better view of it. There we go, some pink. And the backstory on this plant is the coolest part of it. So I got this at the IPPS plant auction, and I won it, but this was actually a plant from Miss Margie Jenkins' garden. And so it's just really special. If y'all know who Margie Jenkins was, she was a really, really big in the nursery industry, and she's done a lot in the industry, growing azaleas, natives, everything else. So it's a really special plant to me, but it's a super cool ground cover, y'all. It only grows a foot tall, and it'll creep, and it's an evergreen, and it's just absolutely beautiful. I love this plant, and you can plant it in sun or part sun. You know, I've got it on my balcony in a pot right now because, again, I don't have a yard. But one day when I get a yard, it's going to spread.
And I really like that one because the variegation has red in it as well.
Yes.
As a side note, depending on, a lot of times white variegation can be virus-based. Now, with it being modeled like that one might have a genetic component. But red variegation is almost always genetic.
Okay.
Which means if for some reason part of it went solid green, you might still occasionally see the flecks of red. Now, sometimes the green actually overrides that. But do you ever have to prune out solid green things out of there to keep it red?
I have pruned out a few, yeah.
So you are going to have to watch variegated Asian Jasmine. I have some at the office where I go through, and it's not as nice as the one you have. It's just the white variegation, and I have to go through and occasionally take out the solid ones because, as we mentioned, being solid green is going to be a lot more vigorous, and if you let that go, it would overtake it, and eventually you would have just all solid green instead of the nice white variegation.
Fair enough. Yeah, we got to show off our aspidistras.
Okay, you want to jump to that one? I'll let you show yours first.
Yeah, so we have cast iron plants, guys, and Michael tells me, we had a question from Tammy before we get into it. Does this creep only, or will it climb into bushes or trees? The Asian Jasmine.
It will try to climb. I've had one that I got from J.C. Miller, and I planted at my mom's house, and it's about halfway up a live oak right now.
So make sure to control it, guys. Keep it on the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to our cast iron plant, so me and Michael have different variegated cast irons, and I won this at a plant auction. Apparently, I go to a lot of plant auctions. And so this, he said, is the Milky Way dwarf one. Mm-hmm. And so it has these real thin leaves and the speckles on it. And then, Michael, you got to show them yours.
So mine is a bit bigger. Hers is a miniature one, so the speckled variegation. Mine is more striped, and I thought it was a miniature one when I got it. But the more I fertilized it, the bigger and bigger it's gotten.
That is super cool. I like that one too.
And we're going to be hearing some car horns because one of my neighbors is having a birthday, apparently.
That's okay. It happens. It's during COVID. Everyone's coming by. But cast irons, don't forget, guys, these plants, please put them in the shade. They do not like the sun. And in fact, you can also grow them as house plants, which I did not know until this year. So I don't know why that was just like nothing. I don't know. I didn't pick up on. So
And in fact, in Victorian times, people used to grow them that way exclusively for that.
really,
So in their parlor, they were used a lot of time in England as the parlor plant because they tolerate such low shade really well.
okay.
So
I didn't know that at all.
yeah, in fact, they probably started that, and then they kind of started going outside, and that's one reason a lot of traditional Southern plantings have their base in English culture first. So like the camellias and cast iron plants or something we took over from theirs, and we could grow them outside as opposed they had to have theirs inside or in a greenhouse.
Okay. Okay. That's really cool.
So the next plant we're going to probably talk about, let's see, we're all right on time, is Citronella Grass. Now, it is related to lemongrass. And I know you have it in the notes. You know how to tell the difference?
I didn't get that part. So no.
Okay.
Oh wait, it's the stem.
It's a stem. So it is this maroon stem. Let's see if I can get it off. I can't really get a ton of it off, but this is how you can tell it from the regular lemongrass. Regular lemongrass would be kind of green all the way down. Now this is another one that's supposed to be insect repellent, but it's mainly going to be if you crush the leaves and rub it on you. Now, I have to be careful with it. My cat likes to eat it because cats like lemongrass. Now this is one of those things you have to be careful for. Lemongrass, and it's not, girl, stay a plant. It's okay for a cat to eat a little of. It gives them a catnip-like effect.
Okay.
You can't really do that with citronella grass because it has the citronella compounds in it. It's really not good for them to eat. So
Okay.
I may have to actually rehome this plant because when my cat gets out, that's the first thing he does is try to run to it and eat it. But it is a nice, lovely grass. I'm actually not a very big fan of grasses, I'll just admit. But if I was going to have grasses as a pinnacle highlight plant in my landscape, I'd want it to be something like this with a citronella grass based thing, where at least I could crush the leaves and get some use out of it occasionally.
It's the same thing. It's not mosquito repellent until you crush the leaves, correct?
Exactly. Now, I have heard that even though it has kind of the citronella in it, you can use it to cooking. But we all know how pleasant citronella tastes. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it too much for that. Apparently there is some research that shows it can deter whiteflies even without being crushed.
Cool.
So
Okay.
that might be something you might, if you're having whitefly problems with your tomatoes, this could be a companion plant for that. Now, I wouldn't trust on it to completely eliminate the whiteflies in my yard, but it might be something nice like that for that.
Can you talk about companion plants? Like, what does that mean for everybody?
Oh, I have a whole PowerPoint presentation about that. That is when you grow two plants together for a mutual benefit. Now, tomatoes and basil is one that's often common used. Often, probably the one that you see the most because it is fairly effective is marigolds with a vegetable garden. Marigolds release a compound in their roots that kills or just either kills nematodes or the nematodes really don't like. And that's a good thing, especially for if you're going to have a garden in the same place year after year. Nematodes can become a persistent issue. So planting them with your garden keeps nematodes from getting in there. So it's a nice kind of sustainable approach to that. There are chemicals you can use should your nematode problem get bad enough, but I would just prefer to plant marigolds in my garden and mix ornamentals with my vegetables, which used to be very common. People used to do that all the time, like that oxalis story I was telling you earlier in the video. That's where the oxalis came from. It was growing in the vegetable garden, and people used to grow flowers with their vegetables. And in fact, if more people did that, it would eliminate probably 30% of the calls I get about vegetables, which is poor pollination.
Oh, fair. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. That makes a lot of sense.
So,
Okay.
like we mentioned it already, probably one I would encourage for that is verbena.
Okay.
It's very good at attracting pollinators. The heliotrope would also be a good option for that. Just mix and match. have ornamentals next to your vegetables and vegetables next to your ornamentals.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add? Do you have another one?
Oh, I've got more, I believe. Let's see. Yes, let's see. I think the next one I have is a sedum. And I'll pretty much talk about the two sedums. We have one sedum, our lemon sedum, which is a super plant.
Yes.
And this is the time of year, well, it started much earlier. I actually started this just from a cutting about this size earlier this year. It propagates very well. If you have a friend who has some, you can get a few of these and you'll have one this size before too long. And I'm just kind of waiting for this one to fill it and spill over the pot. They're succulents. They do really well being dry. They would prefer to be dry as opposed to wet. And I'll talk about that in the next sedum I show in a little bit. And they don't really make extensive root systems. They're kind of delicate. And you'll find if you were even just to do this, you would break some pieces off. Now, a lot of times I just let them fall in the pot and they root and start another little plant of it. So it's not a disaster. I will say I had a few. I'm going to have to watch it and see how it actually mounds over, because just the wind, rubbing like this was enough to kind of eventually make this fall off.
Okay.
So I'll see how it works spilling over the container. They work really well as a ground cover in between rock. Only thing you might want to watch, they can tolerate high heat a lot of times, so that's okay. But even our high heat can be a bit intense for this at times.
Yeah.
But you'll see this one out in the nursery centers fairly readily, this lemon sedum. It's very common. One I had got this year that I had never seen before was a chocolate sedum.
I like it.
And what it's interesting, it turns red in the fall and makes yellow flowers. So we'll have to, if we do this again in the fall, we'll have to show what it looks like different. Now, I will say, like I mentioned before, it's a bit delicate. I potted it up and probably about 25% of the fronds fell off. But I didn't let that bother me. You can see it wasn't quite big enough for this pot. So I just put them in a circle around that, and that will fill in this pot much quicker. This one's a bit unusual. Let me show you. It kind of has a little bit bare, almost, I wouldn't call it lignified and more woody, but it is compared to the lemon sedum.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a bit different than that. Now this one, I checked it when I bought it. It was in just a 1 gallon pot, and I turned it upside down and looked at the roots, and it didn't have enough roots to justify potting it. And I kept watching it was just kind of sitting there. It was really staying a bit too wet.
Okay.
And that's why just yesterday, actually, I potted it up in this terracotta pot, because the terracotta pot has that wicking action that will help keep it more dry. So that's one reason I use terracotta pots a lot more often. That wicking is very useful for that action for that. Let's see. And I went a tiny bit quicker than I anticipated, but that covers what I had notes for. There's one other plant I had just kind of an extra. This is another type of strawberry. It's not ornamental. This is that fancy French one I told you about before, the Mara de Bois.
Yeah.
So I really am quite curious about the parentage of this one. When you look at the leaves, it doesn't look quite like a regular garden strawberry.
No, it doesn't.
The leaves are not as glossy. It almost looks like an Alpine selection. And I'm going to watch it closely to see what it may be. It may either be a recent hybrid with that, or it might be a selection from an Alpine strawberry. But what I'm excited about with this, having tried a bunch of different strawberries, some of them are more tart than I like, and you have to let them stay on there to be almost overripe to have that nice sweetness that overwhelms the tartness.
Okay.
This one, I was just kind of looking at it today, and a half-ripe berry fell off. I mean, when I say half-ripe, half of it was slightly pink, the other half was still white. But when it fell off, I felt it. I said, this is kind of soft. It, not even fully ripe, is sweeter than a lot of the ones I buy in the grocery store.
Really?
So I'm real excited and hope to keep everybody updated about this one. to me, there's a niche for that. I would rather have a better tasting one,
Yeah.
that's smaller and maybe more soft than one that's more tart. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of times when I make strawberries, I have to cut them and then pour sugar on them.
Yeah.
So
I always like them with powdered sugar when they're too tart. I'm like,
or and then the whipped cream, and then all of a sudden it's no longer a healthy fruit anymore. But this is one that I'm excited to be watching. I tell almost everybody about it, and when I can find an excuse to.
can you? We got a little bit of time if you'd like. Could you show us the strawberry planters, or no? Are they kind of?
We will attempt to.
Okay, I know you're on kind of a.
Let's see. I think I can remove some plants from the wall here, and we might see a little bit of it better.
Yep.
We could attempt walking over there, if you think that would work, or is that a okay view?
No, that's an okay view. We can see them.
So essentially, I have all of those in larger pots. You can see those two metal posts I have there. I have bird netting draped over that.
Okay.
Because the birds really like my strawberries as well. And that was keeping me from getting any nice, very ripe ones. But that has allowed me to. And I know we had another one where I kind of talked about more of those in detail. But I have on the second one past there, beyond what you can see, is more of my alpines, which I think are going to be more like that Mar and Boys. And I think that's worth talking about. Let me go walk over there and I'll bring one.
Okay. And guys, just to let everybody know, we are trying to get all the Live at Fives uploaded to our Ag Center YouTube channel, and we'll work on that. But they're always available on our Facebook page, even after the live stream. So y'all just remember that as we go. Like, you'll always be able to watch these episodes. So what you got there, Michael?
So I have one that's much more big and full, but I'm using it. I'm rooting runners from it in other pots, so I didn't want to have to take it apart. But this is an Alpine Strawberry, or Fragaria vesca. And it's much softer, and the flavor is supposed to be much more intense. Now, that comes at the expense of size. These are much, much smaller berries.
Okay.
So they are just not going to be, this is what you might, I think if there was going to be any market for this, it would be mainly for home use or high-end restaurants.
Okay.
So I think there is a niche there that could be filled. I'm doing the research on it to see what I would recommend. Let's see, what is this guy? Oh, this one's called White Soul. So it actually makes a white berry.
Oh, neat.
And the reason I'm looking into this one is that it's supposed having that white berry should help with birds. I have discovered that with strawberries myself, that the birds wait like we do until they're turning and look really nice, and that's when they attack it. They will leave a white berry alone a lot of times. Not all the time. Sometimes you get some very impertinent bird that will attack the white berry before it even develops, just so that it messes it up all the way along.
Oh, yeah. That sounds about right. Mm-hmm.
But the alpine berries, I think, are definitely worth looking at. So I'm looking at white ones. I'm looking at some traditional German and French ones. And then there's one that I'm germinating from seed. And I think we talked about this before. Germinating these from seed is a very long process.
Yeah.
I've had some for months that are only about this tall. Because the seed are just so tiny. Think about the seed on the outside of a strawberry. So there's not a lot of reserves there. It has enough just to put out 2 little seed leaves, and then it almost needs to photosynthesize to be able to make anything else.
Okay.
But that's one goal. I hope to be able to share these with people in our state. Once we have these, and they are very vigorous, I can share rooted plants once there's enough of them to share.
That would be awesome. Well, thank you, Michael, for being on today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. We went a little bit quicker than normal, but when I get excited, I talk quicker, and I get excited about plants.
I know. I'm like, you have so many cool plants. I was like, yes, this is going to be an awesome episode, man. We appreciate it.
Yes, and we could pull more, but I think it would be worth waiting until we can do another episode when I can do more research and give us more details.
It'd be cool. I'm like, we could do one in the fall and have like a whole new set, and also, you know, update us on your strawberry crop and everything by that time too. So.
Yeah, especially a lot of these, I'm getting good strawberries now, and hopefully they will keep going till that time.
Yeah. But thank you again. And guys, to remind y'all, like, these videos are always available to view on Facebook publicly, even after the live stream ends. But we are working to get them up on the Ag Center's YouTube channel as well. So they'll be in like 2 different places, and you'll have all the information that Michael like totally just gives everybody. And like, this is the second time he's been on, and it is absolutely phenomenal. I always learn something myself. So Michael, you're getting a bunch of people saying thank you over here. And guys, tune in on Monday. We have another great episode with Ron Strahan. He's going to talk about weeds in your landscape and how to manage it, and how to manage weeds in your lawn.
And you might want to submit some beforehand so that we actually know what they are.
Yeah, I would definitely submit them. So like, message us on our Facebook page, on the Ag Center Facebook page, if you have a Ron weed question. Basically, he's going to answer all your weed questions, and the ones in your lawn and landscape, not the other type. And anyways, but yeah, he's going to actually film out at Burden, so that should be a cool episode as well.
And Dr. Strahan is probably one of our most knowledgeable weed specialists in the state. He's who I defer to when I get a question about weed control that I don't know. So he's an excellent resource for our state, and we greatly appreciate him.
Amen. Yeah. So Monday at 5, he will be on. And thank you again, Michael. And we'll have you back on for sure. I appreciate it.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Y'all stay safe out there. Bye.